It has been 2 years since Bill Ackman called Herbalife a pyramid scheme, a criminal enterprise with an intrinsic value of zero. He wagered $1 billion shorting the stock and then watched it shoot up. Rival hedge fund managers like Carl Icahn, George Soros, and Bill Stieritz, a true insider, took the other side of the trade. But at least for now, it is Mr. Ackman having the last laugh. Shares have fallen by more than 50% this year, and it appears that Bill is finally in the money. Bill, welcome back to Market Makers.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Normally, when you come out and speak about Herbalife, the stock goes up. Since you spoke over the summer, it has been steadily going down. Maybe it's a risk that you're coming and talking now. What's going on?
So we've actually come up with some new stuff. Believe it or not, on Herbalife, we always have something new, and we always learn something new. And what's changed is a lot of the former Herbalife employees, top distributors, are going states evidence, and they're also coming to Pershing Square. So we got a very interesting video that was filmed by Herbalife at a...
Filmed by Herbalife?
Filmed by Herbalife.
When?
About October of 2005. You'd say, oh, that's 9 years ago, but you'll wait till you see the video. And it's a video of one of the top Herbalife distributors, I think he's in the top 10, talking to other top distributors, a member of the board of directors, several senior executives of the company who were senior vice presidents, who are now senior vice presidents of Herbalife. And he's talking about how Herbalife is basically a pyramid scheme. All
right, well, I want you to know, because we have Bloomberg technology, as soon as you sat down and started speaking Herbalife, shares began to tumble. So let's show a piece of this video right now, shot in 2005, an internal video, not shot by Bill Ackman. It's an Herbalife video. Let's take a look.
How does Herbalife convince people to put up their own money to join a money-losing distribution system that sells overpriced, run-of-the-mill products? Indeed, the word is deception.
This is a great business opportunity.
As long as you're willing to work, Herbalife has a blueprint for success.
What we have is a plan here where it shows you how you could make $120,000 in a year or $240,000 a year, anywhere up to, we have it up to $3.6 million.
At Herbalife, we're immensely proud of the fact that we believe we have an unrivaled business opportunity.
Herbalife representatives make financial success seem almost inevitable. But at this distributor training session, they tell a different story.
We sell people on a dream business that they can make it, yet deep down inside, what do we really know? Yeah, we know that the reality is that most of them aren't going to make it.
The reality is that 98% of Herbalife's 500,000 U.S. distributors earn an average of less than $1.50 per week, with hundreds of thousands suffering significant losses.
The Herbalife business model at this point in time is not based on customers purchasing, it's based on distributors purchasing volume. If that is the Herbalife business model, that's the way that it works.
Okay, so I need to make a correction. That overall video was put together by Pershing Square, but if you see right in there those clips, they were taken by, it was taken by an Herbalife distributor at an internal meeting, and that person standing in the front of the room was a senior Herbalife staff member talking about the fact that people who enter the Herbalife community don't actually use the product.
So we just put up on our website the entire 3-hour video. Not going to make you watch all that stuff.
As only Bill can, 3-hour videos.
We also have a white paper that walks you through the video, so it'll take you a lot less time to get through that. And then we have an 8-minute segment with kind of highlights. I think you took a piece of the highlights. But what people complained about our Nutrition Club presentation, because they said, Bill, where's the smoking gun? Where's Michael Johnson saying, in a video or a recording that this thing is a pyramid scheme? And the answer is we have a guy, Stefan Graziani. He's in just shy of what's called Founder Circle. So he's in the top 10, 15 Chairman's Club members in the company, talking to a group of top distributors. You've got the company present. Actually, Herbalife recorded the video, and he's walking through how this is a deception, his words, and talking about how the business was kind of struggling in 2005 and how they're going to fix it. And unfortunately, things are much worse now. The deception's even greater. The scam's even bigger. This is a pretty interesting document. It's interesting enough that we did not get it first. The government got it about 30 days ago. And then,
okay, the government got it before you.
That's right.
How did you come into possession of it?
Yes.
An intermediary let's put it this way, we're not allowed to disclose the person who gave it to us. And actually, this is not a case where you need to rely on our source. You can just watch the video yourself, all 3 hours of it. And our excerpts The excerpts in the video are short and good, but you have to watch the whole thing to really understand it. But I think it will be an important document as evidence.
But walk us through, because Ackman detractors will say, well, you know what, he finds people who were distributors, who weren't making any money, and he puts them on their payroll. So just walk us through exactly how, you don't have to give us a name, but how you've come to acquire all this info.
So there are a lot of distributors now, as they see their paychecks declining, as they are realizing that Herbalife is likely to be shut down, that are going to the government or coming to us and saying, look, I have information that could be helpful to you. In this case, we had someone come to us with a copy of this video, and it was a very valuable document. The first thing they did is give it to the government, and then they gave it to us. And I think it's a very, very powerful document. But none of the people in the video, you know, I've never met any of them. We don't pay them anything. These are Chairman's Club members. There's a board member in the room. There are several senior executives who are featured in the video. You know, so it's a recording. It's not something that we created. No one was paid to be in this document. It was an Herbalife document.
Bill, you mentioned a couple of minutes ago that people are turning state's evidence. They're coming to Pershing Square with their stories, perhaps tales of woe in some cases. How do you know that they're turning state's evidence? Are these the same people who then subsequently come and tell you that they testified or signed some kind of an affidavit or submitted to some kind of a deposition?
Yes, a number of them have gone directly to the government, and we don't know much about them. A number of them have come to us and say, look, I'm scared. I want to be protected. What if the company sues me? And we've agreed to give indemnities to some of those people before they go talk to the government. So we've been very
How does that work exactly?
We protect them in the event they get sued by Herbalife.
So you'll cover their legal costs?
That's correct.
But you don't have them on salary?
That's correct.
Why would... Again, just so that everybody understands how it all works. No, of course.
I encourage other distributors. We welcome people to come forward. We've got evidence that can be helpful. We encourage them to go directly to the government. If they feel they need legal protection, we're willing to take the risk of protecting them, because Herbalife is not...
To be whistleblowers.
So you've got to say that's fair, Eric. I mean, these are people who don't have very much money. I'm not questioning whether it's fair or not.
I'm just wondering why you'd have to indemnify them for being... You know, there are
think about
pretty well-established statute and case law supporting...
But who's the kind of person who's an Herbalife salesman, Eric?
Well, it's probably not a legal scholar.
That's right.
That's fair to assume.
By the way, the government pays whistleblowers. And so if one of the top distributors were to come forward, and some have, and they sit down with the government and they say, look, here's how this scam works, and I can help you get to the company, the government will pay that person to the extent they make a meaningful recovery. They'll share part of that recovery.
Yeah, but if I was a failed Herbalife salesman, having the confidence to say, I'm going to be the whistleblower and I'm going to get this company, I would think if Bill couldn't get the government to do anything, why could I?
Well, that raises an important question. I understand why 2 years ago you made the big presentation about Herbalife that triggered a big decline in the share price. Fun to watch, I'm sure, more fun for you to make money. But 2 years later, why keep it up? The government, I mean, from what we understand from you and other people, there's scrutiny at the very least, and perhaps active investigations underway.
Sure.
So people look at videos like the one that you showed us today and you've made available on your website, and the white paper that goes along with it, and the stuff that we saw last week, for example, about the California Attorney General, and ask themselves, why the persistent sort of PR campaign? Why not just let the government do its work?
Unfortunately, the government takes a long time, and in the meantime, there are literally billions of dollars being extracted from distributors. So the more public we are about this, the greater the possibility that distributors say, hey, this is a ripoff, I'm going to step away from it. So it has both a protective effect with respect to new people being scammed. It also has an economic effect. It is much harder for Herbalife to recruit distributors in a world with transparency, right, where there are videos that I'm sure the company would rather not have been made public are now public. It's going to be a lot harder for them to recruit new distributors. And you've seen that in the results, right? The company claims they're a health and wellness company. They talk about the obesity crisis. Well, the obesity crisis is worse in 2014 than it was in 2012. But their business is deteriorating. And the reason why the business is deteriorating is because it's much harder for them to recruit distributors.
All right, let's just take a look. This full screen right here is year-over-year sales growth of Herbalife falling consecutively. There you go, starting third quarter in 2013 to third quarter 2014. So can you speak to their numbers and what this last quarter's looked like?
Sure. This last quarter was nothing, pretty close to a disaster. I expect Q4 will be worse. So what's going on is they have about 2 million distributors a year that quit. They have 3.9 million total. So they've got to, in order to grow, they have to replace 2 million distributors that quit, plus they have to recruit another 2.1 million, 2.2 million, right? The moment that treadmill starts to go faster than they can recruit, the business starts to decline. And you saw evidence of that in Q2. You saw evidence of that in Q3. I think you'll see more evidence of that in Q4. How do we know that? We know that because Herbalife has now gone on sale. They've told distributors who have quit.
The product is on sale?
What they've done is the qualifications to become a sales leader. Used to be you had to buy 5,000 volume points. Now you have to buy 4,000, and they give you more time to pay, right? What they're doing is they're trying to get people to stay in the scam or to return to it. So they launched a sale, if you will, on November 1st. That's one pretty good indicator. The other thing that's happening is actually Herbalife probably has more currency exposure than almost any other company. Why is that? Because they produce their product in the United States. It's very unusual for a consumer packaged goods company. Produce the product here, and they ship it abroad. What are their big markets? Mexico, Brazil, Russia, Venezuela. What do those four markets have in common? One, exposure to oil, and two, what's going on with their currencies, right? So when the cost of goods sold are in U.S. dollars and your revenues are in Venezuelan bolivar, where the exchange rate just in the last quarter has gone from, call it 80 to 1 to 170 to 1, or the Russian ruble, right? They're getting killed in each of these markets. So the fundamentals of the business are deteriorating as it becomes more difficult for them to recruit distributors. The whole thing is a confidence game. As distributors lose confidence, they withdraw.
Bill, go ahead.
To assume you still believe this company's worth zero?
Yes.
So remind us what you've said about how long you're willing to wage this battle.
So I distinguish between two things. In terms of the battle, I will go forever, right? I've said to the end of the earth. In terms of the investment, there I'm a fiduciary for other people, right? Other people's money. So I have to look every day, risk and reward. Does it make sense to stay short? Does it make sense to add? Does it make sense to subtract? And what's interesting is the risk reward is probably the most compelling it has been since we put the investment on. Why is that? Okay? The answer is the business has begun to deteriorate. So the risk...
It's finally paying off?
Well, not just that the stock price is down, but the risk of the stock price going to 50 or 60 or 70 or $80 a share has gone down enormously. Why? Because the business is declining. That's number one. Number two, they used up all their firepower. They bought back $1.3 billion worth of stock. So the FTC announced a formal investigation, I think, mid-March. The company announced a $1.3 billion buyback, and they bought back a huge amount of stock at, I think, an average of $65 a share. Right now, the company has leverage. They got $2 billion worth of debt. Their cash balances are declining. The business is deteriorating. There is no longer a bull case for the stock. So I think the risk of being short in terms of the stock price going up has declined dramatically. We're getting closer, in my opinion, to the government intervening. I can't tell you the date. I don't know. But you had an SEC investigation that's been going on for 2 years. You have an FTC investigation for 9 months. You have other criminal investigations that are ongoing that, you tell me when they're going to act. But I think the more public the problem, I just think at some point the government's going to finish their work.
Is as much of your LP's money in this trade as there was back in December of 2012?
No. We changed the form of the position. It was originally, if you remember, an all-short position.
Yes.
My friend Carl and others did a good job pushing it to about $80 a share. It became quite a large position. It was at 1.15% of our capital. At that point, we covered a big chunk of the short, and we bought put options.
Yes.
And so we actually increased the potential for profit because we are now short many more shares than we were short originally, but we reduced the amount of capital we have at risk. So today it's, and then the other thing that's happened is our fund has done very well.
Yes.
So this is today about a 7% position. At the peak, it was 15%. But the opportunity for profit is actually greater than it was at the peak.
Since we began this interview, Herbalife is now down officially over 2%. You mentioned your friend Carl. Are you and he discussing Herbalife at all? Have you had any recent conversations?
We haven't had a recent one. Unfortunately, I think he's kind of stuck. He's on the board of directors. He's got 5 directors, 5 of his affiliates on the board. He just can't sell. I'd love to see him sell. I think that'd be great for Carl, be good for the short thesis. But he is a stuck holder. I think I would describe him as
hedged
that.
And wedged. Can't get out.
He's unhedged.
Unhedged. Can't get out.
Wedged, yeah.
So, given what you were
Carl's going to do fine. He's done well on his other on Apple and other things.
Don't cry for me, Carl Icahn. You'll
He's
be
doing
okay.
fine.
Given what you were just saying about and forgive me for trying to interpret what you were saying, but the risk, you perceive that the risk of this position has actually gone down recently because of the performance of the company.
That's right.
Because the tactics that you've been employing and what you believe is happening with the government investigations is actually gaining traction.
And they're running out of victims.
So how does that change in any way how you plan to manage this position going forward over the next several months, early into 2015?
So we had a bunch of put options expiring in January. We thought we spent the last several months extending those options all the way into 2016, as far as 2016, but staggered over time. I think this will be a 2015 event, the implosion of the company. I think worst case, early 2016. What gives me confidence? The company has $1.15 billion of debt that comes due on early March of 2016. They are not going to be able to refinance that credit facility. They do not have hard assets to provide security. The banks that provided that facility provided it before the government investigations, before all the revelations. I encourage, if I were a lender to the company, I would encourage them to watch a few hours of video.
Website. Just help put it into perspective.
Actually it's on the factsaboutherbalife.com.
Factsaboutherbalife.com.
Yeah.
Yet another expense you've incurred. How much have you spent on this?
I mean, I think we estimated the number of about $50 million.
50.
Right. That's about over 3 years and includes all our legal costs and investigative costs, production costs, etc. It's a big number. It's small relative to the scale of the investment. Even something like Allergan, for example, was quite an expensive investment. Our strategy is much more legally intensive than your typical passive investor. So that is one of the costs of doing business.
Then let's talk about Allergan for a second. Are you happy? I mean, how do you feel about the outcome?
I think first of all, again, our focus always is doing the best we can for the shareholders of the companies in which we invest, right? Our franchise depends on our maximizing value for really the other shareholders, and that's how we ultimately do well for ourselves. In this case, we had a stock that was $125 a share when we started. $30 billion of value was created over the course of a year. Our favored candidate for a merger was Valeant. Now, activists didn't really even exist of any consequence to be a viable buyer for Allergan, viable merger partner, until very late in the year after they bought Forest. But we got very comfortable with the Valeant management team. We thought there was a very good fit in the business. And ultimately, Valeant wasn't prepared to pay what was necessary to own the business. I credit them with the discipline to say, hey, our stock is really undervalued. We don't want to issue more of it to be competitive with activists. So what we have is I think Activist is a good company, and we spent some time with the CEO. In fact, two of my guys today are at Activist's headquarters, doing due diligence on the company. We still own every share of Allergan that we had purchased, other than the piece that belonged to Valeant. So I think there is
And we'll own that for how long?
We have yet to decide the answer to that question. We're still doing due diligence on Activists. What's interesting, by the way, this is one of the most interesting. If you were just a risk arb, right? If you're a merger arb, you can buy Allergan stock today. It's about a 28% return. Assuming the transaction closes as we expect it will in April. And it's a very, very high probability deal. And it just sort of tells you what's going on in the event-driven space.
Since the deal is off the table for Valeant, how does that leave you viewing Valeant? Do you own it? Do you want to buy it?
Sure. So we are still restricted from buying Valeant. We're trying to get out of those restrictions.
Because you'd buy it?
We had a confidentiality agreement that had some restrictions. But once those are gone, we're going to take a very hard look.
What do you say to people, Bill, who look at the way you structured that offer, or at least Valeant structured that offer for Allergan, and liken it to green mailing, sort of green mailing 30 years later?
Okay, so green mail was buy a stake in a company, threaten to take it over, and then get bought out at a premium. The company levers up and buys you out. All the other shareholders end up owning a less levered company that's been diluted by an overpriced acquisition, and that was a bad thing. Okay,
bad for the remaining shareholders.
Bad for the remaining shareholders. In this case, every shareholder made more money than we did, right? Because we spent the legal fees, the cost, the time, the energy, and this stock has gone from $127 to $210 a share over the course of a year. So the difference, I compare it to what I call Carl Icahn 1.0 versus Carl Icahn 2.0. In the old days, Carl was in a group some of whom took green mail, i.e. they got bought out when the management was threatened. And today, Carl Icahn's working for all the shareholders, right? Same thing for us. We do not benefit unless all of the shareholders benefit. So I think it's a much better system.
Fannie, Freddie, is there any money to be made after the most recent court decision?
Yes. I think we have added meaningfully to our position as recently as the last week or two. And we think, one, the court decision that came down, first of all, did not really address the substance of what we think is the most important argument, which is that we believe the government took private property. Right? The government stepped in here and took 100% of the profits of Fannie and Freddie forever, unilaterally. right? Imagine you wake up one day, the government walks into Apple and says, okay, we're going to take 100% of the profits of Apple.
Well, Apple isn't under conservatorship.
Well, conservatorship doesn't mean you can steal, right? The government did a very expensive bailout of Fannie and Freddie, injected $185 billion of capital, 10% coupon, and they took 80% of the equity. And I think the government did a great job extracting its pound of flesh.
But they make the rules, Bill.
No, the government can't act outside the law, right? And ultimately, the government cannot take. Now, that transaction was negotiated between the board of directors and between the government, right? Now, the board of directors is no longer a fiduciary for shareholders. 4 years after the crisis, both companies have turned profitable. We wake up one day, and the government steps in and takes 100% of the profits. And the justification is, well, they'll never be able to pay us back. What happens over the next 18 months? The government's paid back. Right? So that is a decision that will not be allowed to stand. If it has to go to the Supreme Court, it will go to the Supreme Court. But I think more importantly, I think people realize that Fannie and Freddie have become more essential today than they were even 5 years ago. Right? They're a much greater percentage of the market. The Obama administration just taxed them $500 million or so a year for affordable housing benefits. And of all of the companies that emerged from the crisis, the only one that's a risk to the taxpayer today is Fannie and Freddie. Why? Because all the banks have recapitalized. Citigroup has recapitalized. AIG has recapitalized. The government has sold out their stake. Here, Fannie and Freddie have no capital because the government every quarter takes the money, and it helps the government meet the budget deficit. But there is no. It's a false profit because there is no capital cushion left in Fannie and Freddie. And the only way for this business to protect the taxpayer is for it to recapitalize. The only way for that to happen is for it to be returned to the private sector.
Let's talk about McDonald's. Are you active in McDonald's?
No, there was a rumor that we were active in McDonald's. I'd love to tell you the answer to that question, but we can't, because if we comment on some rumors and not on others, you'll know the answer. So if we're going to buy a stake in McDonald's, we'll be required to make some kind of filing at some point.
Well, if you hit 5%.
Even if we don't hit 5%, we'll have to disclose it. And we're not shy about sharing our points of view.
That's true.
Right? So what I will say is we're a very proud shareholder of Burger King. The management of Burger King has done a fabulous job. They just closed earlier this week, I think, the acquisition of Tim Hortons.
Eric's favorite, Canadian, Tim Hortons.
Well, now it's called something else, right? It's called Quality.
Restaurant Brands.
Right.
Well,
yes.
I think what's interesting about Restaurant Brands International is they're telling you this is not the last deal they're going to do. So really what they're building here is a restaurant conglomerate with a fabulous management team.
What else so you're a fan of Burger King management, 3G, now they have Tim Hortons. What else should they go after?
Well, right now they should focus on Tim Hortons. So once they're done with that, then...
well, what makes sense? I mean,
hold
in
on, wait. This speaks to the power of Bill Ackman's words. In that moment, the stock has already surged up almost 1% in the last 5 minutes. So are you sure? You sure you don't want to say what you want to do with McDonald's?
I'm sure. I can't comment. I think that if McDonald's were as well run as Burger King, though, the stock would go up a lot. That's for sure.
So which is to say that McDonald's isn't particularly well run. We've all seen the results.
Unfortunately, that's true.
What's true?
But I can't comment on McDonald's.
Okay.
Let's talk about something else.
Zoetis.
Yes.
Where do you stand right now?
Too early to discuss. Sorry.
Why?
How about some stuff I'm happy to talk about?
Okay.
Just came back from a board meeting for Canadian Pacific, where I was yesterday. They're doing an incredible job. The railroad is running about as best as it's ever run. The management team is doing an amazing job. It's a stock that's been hit because of perceived energy exposure. I think that is an opportunity for investors. This is a company that will grow at a high rate. There's an enormous amount of opportunity that exists in terms of additional efficiency that can be created. And we have kind of the best CEO and number two, Keith Creel, in the industry.
How does falling oil prices affect them?
The question is, they have been delivering, the growth in the future. Some of the growth will come from oil deliveries, and to the extent that there's less drilling in the United States, that will less oil sand recovery. To the extent that were to happen, that will have some effect on growth. But this is a business that will grow at a high rate.
So Hunter, as you know, Hunter Harrison, the CEO, whom you put or helped put in place, has quite loudly advocated for this notion that there should be consolidation among North American rail carriers.
Yes.
And he would like to be a consolidator or a consolidatee, presumably the former, not the latter. But do low oil prices help to drive consolidation in the rail industry?
it's not the oil prices that will drive consolidation. What will drive consolidation is the need for more efficiency, right? There has not been a meaningful amount of investment. It's not like we're going to have a new rail.
No.
Meanwhile, the economy has grown a lot over the last 20 years, and the only way the rails are going to be able to deal with the product and get it to the end markets is for them to become more efficient. And some efficiency in terms of delivery efficiency, that will only happen to a great extent, to the extent there is some degree of consolidation. And there can be consolidation that happens without a threat from a competitive point of view, right? The proposed CSX...
Could you help to facilitate that
Sure.
in the manner that something akin to what happened with Allergan, for example?
I would say there's more regulatory issues in the rail industry than there is in two pharma companies combining that don't have...
But if yes is the answer...
The answers are always open to anything.
Sure, but what might work? What kinds of things are on the table to help drive a rail merger forward?
Common sense, and the owners of the business. I mean, I think that this management team has done a remarkable job.
Common sense, according to Bill.
Well, the management team of CP has done a remarkable job taking the worst-run railroad in North America. I think pretty soon it will be the best run in terms of just on pure operating metrics. And if you apply those same metrics to another rail, you can create enormous value. And ultimately what will drive that is the shareholders will say, look, you've disappointed. If management teams disappoint year after year, they'll want to change.
Bill, quickly before we run, how's 2015 going to be different for you and Pershing Square than 2014?
We're going to end up with a big chunk of cash from the activist Allergan transaction. About 60% of the consideration is going to be in cash. Obviously, we're looking for a good place to put that capital. But I would think it's going to be similar. We're going to find one or two new things to do. This year, Allergan, Zoetis. Zoetis will be a little more focused on, I would say, in 2015. And then, look, this actually, I like all of our companies. So,
Bill, thank you so much for joining us.